Today, we're gonna continue our little journey to the source code of Silksong. And this time, I've came across tons of new interesting stuff, including enemies AI, some Easter eggs, and even some hidden stuff. But before we begin, I want to take a moment and thank you all for your support. In the past few days, I've received so much feedback from you guys. Like, I never expected so many of you to be interested in programming as I do, and yet here we are. And with that being said, let's catch some bugs! Okay, so digging the source code, I've came across a field called Broly, and at first I was confused, as it reminds me of Broly from Dragon Ball. I thought that's an Easter egg, but then I realized nobody gonna leave an Easter egg in the source code, just because literally only nerds like me will read through the code. So I googled what Broly is, and apparently in England, Australia and New Zealand, and possibly in some other countries, that's a slang word for umbrella. And what's the closest skill or an item that reminds umbrella in Silksong? Bullseye! That's the Drifter's Clock! Using this item, Hornet can ride vertical updrafts of wind in the environment, and also it can be used to glide down slowly from high places. What's fun about it is that it's not named as Drifter's Clock in the code. On other side, there is no mentions of Broly in the game, and the only possible way to find out this is by reading the source code. I guess now we have proof that Hornet does use an umbrella, which reminds me of Mary Poppins. Funny thing. What I also have found in the source code is some information about possible endings of the game. There is a class named Cinematic Player that is responsible for playing cutscenes, and looking at the code we can see that there is an additional ending related to a quest named Mr. Mushroom Quest. However, I don't know what that means, as I played this game not as much and I am still in Act 1, so feel free to write down in the comments if you know what it means. Now, let's inspect the economy of Farloom once more. Last time I've mentioned that rosaries are actually named Geo in the source code, but what I really wanted to know is whether it was a deliberate decision by the developers to make it this way. So this time, inside hero item state struct, I found this line of code. It literally says rosaries equal Geo. I guess now we can be 100% sure it was a deliberate decision to leave Geo entries in the source code. Although you can also find a mentions of money. For example, over here in the currency type enum, the main in-game currency is listed as money. Overall, there are 3 different namings for the main currency in the source code. These are rosaries, Geo and money. A truly fascinating hybrid system, if you ask me. However, that's not all of it, as there are hidden currency in Silksong, and it's called Crowbell. You can find fields and functions named as Crowbell currency, and yes, I know it's a housing item in the game, although I am curious why name it this way. Nonetheless, currently it's used only to calculate how many shards and rosaries you will get from the Crowbell, although we should consider that a lot of content was cut and didn't make it to the final game, so who knows. Maybe at some point there was a separate Crow currency, but then it was cancelled and didn't make it to the final game. Or maybe that's just my delusional theories. And last but not least, interesting fact about economy of Farloom is that apparently the exchange rate is 2 Geo for 1 rosaries, according to Arcane X sell price, which can be sold for 1200 Geo in Hollow Knight and for 600 rosaries in Silksong. A small but interesting detail I wanted to mention. There is also even more proofs that Silksong was made on top of Hollow Knight. Thanks to Redditor Upbeat Future 7559, we have found remnants of the previous game in the code, like the Grim Charms or the Unbreakable Charms, that simply doesn't exist in Silksong while still present in the code. Or even the Dream Nail from the first game, and the Hive Knight code. There is no such things in Silksong, yet it exists in the code. I even managed to find a Grim Nightmare DLC code remnants in Silksong, including including map data. For whatever reason, Team Cherry decided to not remove those. Maybe it's because it could break something, or maybe it was a deliberate decision and they wanted to preserve those things for future DLCs. I mean, if you look at it from a different perspective, we have two games that uses literally the same code. So there is a chance we could see a Knight comeback somewhere in the future. Who knows? But I guess it's more like that the whole original Hollow Knight code is stored somewhere in the Silksong code, and it was not removed for whatever reason. And another interesting thing in the game code is that there is a built-in comprehensive cheat system. Now, I know what you're thinking of. No, you cannot use those cheats. They are disabled by default as they meant to be used by the developers only. Funny thing, there are specifically cheats made for PlayStation 5. They are literally named PS5 in the code. My guess is that the devs use them to test the game, as it's a usual thing for developers to make cheats for their games. Without cheats, it would take too much time to test if the game works as intended. Although they are still present in the final build of the game, and we have cheats for invincibility, damage cheats, God mode, performance debugging cheats, achievements forcing, and teleportation cheats. All of those can be enabled through mods, but in vanilla game there is no way to access them. And in first Hollow Knight game there was a similar things, like for example if you open up your save file, literally the fourth line would be a cheat. The field is called Avoid All Achievements, and if you set it to true and start the game, well, you will get all the achievements in the game right away. I guess that's the new fastest route to get them all. And if you're actually interested in how cheats are made and want to try it yourself, recently I've released a video on the channel about cheat engine, so make sure to check it out, as it may become your first step into learning a programming. Okay, next let's look at how enemies AI works in this game. Silksong, just like the first Hollow Knight game, utilizes a plugin called Playmaker in order to manage animations, AI, FSM, dialogues, etc. However, some things related to enemies AI still can be found in the source code. As an example, there are classes named Alert Range and Line of Sight Detector. Basically, they handle enemy detection zones with line of sight checking. As far as I can tell, they are based on the distance. Also, there is a sophisticated movement AI called Waka, and it has 5 states: not ready, waiting, stopped, walking, and turning, as well as aggro functions, hitboxes, colliders, etc. Waka also has fields like ambush and ignore holes, alongside a funny enum called Stop Reasons, which includes Bored Reason. And there is also an alert timer that tracks how long enemies haven't seen the player, and randomized post times for a natural looking movement behavior. Overall, the enemy's AI code is quite complex and divided into multiple modules and behaviors. One more interesting thing that I have found is that there is a separate code that controls if Hornet is performing, or should I say singing. In other words, apparently all the enemies react when Hornet sings. Sorry if that's a spoiler, although I don't know if that can be considered a spoiler. I mean, this game's literally named Silksong. Also, I have found some interesting things about bosses in this game. For example, all bosses has a tier level in the code, like tier 1 boss, tier 2 boss and tier 3, as well as built-in completion tracking system. No wonder why completion track mods was released so fast. The game itself calculates completion percentage. And once again, last but not least interesting thing about enemies that I have found is a code for a boss rush mode in the game. Apparently, at some point, Team Cherry may release this as a free update, as it looks like this mode is already partly implemented and hidden from the players. And I've also wanted to share with you about some optimizations in the Code of Silksong. For example, how scene transitions works, respawn logic, object pooling system, memory pressure management, and even micro optimizations for field access for a better performance. And maybe something about hitboxes, collision detections, performance HUD, command line arguments, etc. However, I decided to make a dedicated video about all of it, because it will be pretty much a technical overview. that will require you to have at least some knowledge in computer science to understand, as my channel is primarily dedicated to programming, AI and game development. So feel free to subscribe to my channel and don't miss the upcoming videos, as I'll try to make more content like this in the future. And that wraps our video today. I hope you enjoyed it. Once again, thanks for your support. Make sure to ask any questions in the comments below and check out the description. I've left some useful links for you. Have a good day and welcome to my channel. Or should I say, howdy!